Hi, it's Sandy, and today I'm bringing you my September wrap-up. It is finally the end of September. I am not reading anything else today. It is the last day of September, but I can tell you now, I'm not going to manage to get anything else right because it is nearly 9 o'clock at night. So, reading a whole book, not going to happen. Not with the best of intentions is that going to happen, unless I was to read something really, really short like The Egg or Yellow Wallpaper, something like that, I'm currently reading Whiskey Business, so that's not going to happen at all. So instead, I'm going to go through my reads of September and show you how I did, basically. First thing I want to do is start off with my 3 DNFs this month. Yes, there are 3 books that I DNF'd. The first one is The Familiars by Stacey Halls. This was my 12 and 12 pick for September, and unfortunately I just didn't gel with the writing style at all. Didn't care about the characters. I was so bored. I can't even remember. I got like 180 pages or something through it. I don't even think I got that far. I got a chunk through it, and I just couldn't bring myself to care about the characters. And as a very character driven reader, it just was too hard to continue. So this got DNF'd. I'm not particularly surprised, but I am sad because I really did think I was going to enjoy this. Next is actually a non-fiction that I DNF'd, and that is All the Living and the Dead by Hayley Campbell. This book was pretty much just, as far as I got into it, all it was basically a biography of Hayley Campbell, and no offence, I don't care. I have no idea who Hayley Campbell is. I have no interest in her life in the nicest way possible. Like, if I read biographies, I'm reading them on particular people that I'm interested in, or if I read non-fiction, if I read forensic biographies and stuff like that, it's usually because it's someone who's involved in cases, and it's pathologists and forensic scientists and things like that. Whereas Hayley is a journalist, and I'm sure she's a very good journalist. Her writing style is very easy to read. Like, she's very successful, and for good reason, but it wasn't adding anything for me to be reading this book because it was just about her time at this newspaper, and that's not what interests me at all. I wanted stuff about cases. Like, I thought I was going to get stuff about actual cases and the science behind it and stuff like that, because I'm very science orientated when it comes to true crime, fiction, non-fiction even. So that just wasn't giving it to me, so I DNF'd it. And the third was my latest DNF, and also a really rapid fire DNF, which is really unfortunate, and that is The Court of the Vampire Queen by Katie Roberts. I didn't even tell you I was reading this at any point. I borrowed it from Vicky on Friday because I had pre-ordered the special edition from Waterstones, and I only got like a few chapters in, and the chapters are like barely any pages. I couldn't do it. It's not for me. It is not for me. We are right in at the action, and we get absolutely, the characters are giving me nothing. Like, me particularly. This might be for other people, like the introduction just was like too, like this introduction, the start of this book was like 50 pages into what I would, like 50 pages too far in. I wanted more beforehand. I want to know our main character before something happens to her that makes me need to care about her, and I didn't. I couldn't. It was just straight up, like, straight in there, and like, you're learning about this like world building or get left in the dust, and I got left in the dust. So unfortunately this is a DNF, but that does mean I can cancel my pre-order. Now, into the books that I did actually read this month. The first thing I read, I think, will end up being my favourite book of the year, like overall, and that is Daydream by Hannah Grace. This is the third in this series. I can't remember what the series is called for the life of me. But the first one is Icebreaker, the second one is Wildfire, and Daydream follows Henry and Hallie. Henry we've met in Icebreaker and Wildfire. Hallie is completely new to the story, and oh my god, did I love this book. This book had me crying, this book had me laughing, this book just hit me in a way that, like, I haven't felt like it's about a book since I read Happy Place. Like, that sort of memorable, got right into the fabric of my being sort of love for a book. Like, it hit on so many things that I related to in so many ways. And there was two criticisms I had of this book. One is that we didn't get to meet characters that I wanted to meet, and two was that we didn't get to see a hockey game. Those are my two criticisms of this book. Everything else I loved. I absolutely adored this book. I've been thinking about this book since I read it. I was dreaming about this book while I was reading it. I love this. And this is so, like, I can't even describe how this book makes me feel, because it's just, I'm so far past, like, excited about it that I'm, like, back to being chill. But this book was just, it really did hit a certain part of me that it has sort of imprinted itself on me. Hallie and Henry are such special characters to me. Henry has undiagnosed autism and ADHD, and Hallie is how I, like, she's me. Like, honestly, this could have been written about me. Not necessarily, like, all of it, but she broke up with her boyfriend at the very, she breaks up with her boyfriend at the very, very start, in the first page, and suddenly finds herself isolated with no friends, her family far away, and, you know, she's isolated. Like, her family aren't great either, but she's really isolated, and she's really lonely, and she's really alone, and she doesn't really have anybody. And I went through that twice. Well, not twice. One particular time that I can think of when I broke up with, or I was broken up with by a high school boyfriend, and actually, yeah, twice. And I ended up losing all of my friends because they chose him over me, despite the fact that they had only known him the amount of time that I had known him, and I had been their friend for longer. I'd done, like, my best to be as good a friend as I could. I was always putting myself in front of them to defend them. I was always the first one to cheer them on and defend them. And was I perfect? Probably not. I honestly have blacked out a lot of it. But I literally got told by someone, when I was one of my best friends, when I was upset about the fact that I'd just been broken up with someone who I really, really cared about, that I wasn't fun when I was this sad. That's literally the words that were said to me. And so she didn't want to be around me. That was my best friend. My best friend. And that broke my heart. And I moved away to Dundee to go to university, dropped every single friend I had at home, and never looked back. Actually, that's a lie, I didn't drop every single friend. I've got a friend named Kelly. She is honestly the GOAT. We have always been, like, that weird sort of friend where we rarely see each other, but every single time we just pick up like it's nothing. Like, she is one of those friends, those old friends, that you see once in a blue moon, and honestly, you can pick up. So, Kelly, excellent friend, but she wasn't, like, in my main friend group, is what I mean. But yeah, I lost my entire friend group because of this breakup, and I suddenly found myself in a new city, completely alone, living with somebody I barely knew, with, like, basically no friends. Like, I was really, really isolated, and I felt really, really isolated, and it wasn't until I started making friends at uni. Unfortunately, a lot of those friends were through a new guy that I met, and then when we broke up, guess what happened? But in that case, it was more fair because, like, they were his friends first. But I had nobody. I had no one until I met Mark, and Kerry, and my other friends from university. I had nobody, and now I have this incredible group of friends. You guys know who you are. I'm not going to sit and, like, wax lyrical about it, but I have this amazing, incredible tribe around me, this amazing found family, who boost me up and who care about me and who want the best for me in an actual true way that friends before haven't had. And so the experience that Hallie goes through in this book reflects so much how my life went. Obviously not exactly, like this is like a fantastical fictional version of it, but like the feelings that she had, I just empathise with so much. And it was the same with Happy Place. Same breakup, by the way. Happy Place reminded me of that relationship and how it felt like my heart had been ripped out and it felt like a hole had been left. So like that's why I loved Happy Place so much. But this gave me that from Hallie. It gave me the same experience and allowed me to see it from an outside perspective as well. And with Henry, it's so much, I saw so much of myself in Henry in so many ways, like the particulars that he would have, the things he would do, the some of the confusion, like the way he would talk and act and the confusion and stuff like that he gets. The tendencies that I saw in Henry, I relate to a lot. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I absolutely love this book, is because the two main characters I could relate to so much, like just unbelievably relate to them, and it really did hit somewhere close to me. Next thing I read was Sea Glass by Maria V. Snyder, and this is the second in Opal's trilogy, so the Glass trilogy, and this was August's book for the Chronicles of Exterior Long. We've still not done the live show for it, but it's fine because it's been a very, very busy, hectic, horrible month. I was ill, Tori was ill, Tori was on tour with Maria. It's just been, we have set the date now, which should be over, like done by the time you see this, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so I read this. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember much. I'm sure I'll remember more as we're talking in the live show, but I remember enjoying it. Like that's what I took away from it, is that I enjoyed it. I liked seeing a lot of Opal's character develop, and there's so many new elements added into this, so I'm interested to see where the next one goes. And I just felt like this was a really, like, it was a step up from the last book, and they just continue to improve. The next thing I read was for an author event, and that was The Betrayal of Thomas True by AJ West. This book as well, like, again, we'll just have to appreciate the edges. I'm sure you saw the Daydream ones, but I didn't show you. This is about Thomas True, who goes to London because his family are horrific, and he wants to go live with his aunt and uncle and make a new life for himself in London. And the thing about Thomas is he is gay. Now this is back in the, I want to say 1700s, something like that, 1715, where being gay or engaging in homosexual acts was punishable for men by death. If you were two women together, that was totally fine. You might get pilloried or put in the stocks, but for a man it was a death sentence. You were hanged, and yeah, it was horrendous. And so Thomas ends up getting embroiled in the lives and the activities of the Molly Houses of London. And this is based on true events, like not specifically to one person, but events that happened over that period of time, kind of mishmashed into a novel. The research and heart that went into this book is so evident as you read it, and the writing style is quite, it's strangely whimsical and fun, which kind of lends itself to the story even though it's so serious. Like it just gives that sort of juxtaposition to the text. And honestly, hearing AJ West speak on this book was unreal. He is such a lovely, nice guy, and he deserves the world. Like, if you have not picked up one of his books, I highly recommend you do. There's this one and The Spirit Engineer. I love The Spirit Engineer. It was so mind-blowing. Like, by the end of it, I was like, oh my god. Like, I was totally stressed because it almost egged me. It almost egged me, and if you know, you know. This book just had my heart in my throat the entire time. I was going to read like a chapter, put it down, do something else, like tandem read books. I read this in like one sitting because I could not put it down. At the end of every chapter there was something else, and I just wanted to keep reading. I was invested in the characters. I was invested in Gabriel and Thomas, even the other Mollys who were not likeable characters, and some of them were not meant to be likeable characters. There was just a constant stream of action going through this book in a way that didn't overwhelm. this is absolutely, I love this book so much. And I worked out who the bad guy was very early in the book, but as with the Spirit Engineer, I couldn't, I felt like I flip-flopped between who I thought was the betrayer. It was just, because honestly, I think AJ West is excellent at keeping you on your toes as a reader. Like, as soon as you think you've got something figured out, no you don't. As soon as you think you know what's happening, no you don't. He just has an excellent way with prose, with stories, with the stories he wants to tell, and I think it's because he really puts a lot of heart, as I said, into these books. So yeah, if you haven't read this yet, I definitely recommend this. This is not the time period that I read, you know this. Like, how often have I put something down because it is in the wrong time period for me to read, or set in a fantasy world that kind of mirrors a time period? Like, this is not my thing, and yet I absolutely adored it. Like, honestly, I will write anything that man reads, and genuinely, he is the nicest guy. Just the nicest guy, but also like hilariously funny. Next, I read Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This is the W.H. Smith special edition. It is foiled. It's foiled all the way around. I ended up not, if you saw my video about when I got this, I ended up not getting a new copy. I just, like I say, this month was a shit show, so I ended up not getting a new copy, so I'll just have to live with the dent and the wear on the side. Yeah, such is life. This follows West, who is the best friend of the main character from the first book, Ford, and the brother of the female main character, Rosie, from the first book. And he is travelling down the highway, or travelling down a country road, whatever. I don't know what Americans call their roads. Or Canadians, because it's set in Canada, Andy. Yeah, he is travelling down when he sees a woman trying to take a selfie with a bear. And so he kind of rescues her. And then, turns out she was coming to the ranch to work with Ford. And so we end up getting this single dad, age gap romance. And I really enjoy this. Like, I love the kind of slow burn style that this works with. I don't know if everybody would call this a slow burn, but it was very much like, he talks a lot about, he thinks, and how he would treat horses, which you're going to have to stick with me on this one. So he owns a horse training ranch, so like people send their horses to board with him and he trains them, and he gets like the training started so they can then go and show and things like that. And he kind of looks at the female main character, who I'm not going to tell you who it is because spoilers, and he sees her in the same way that like a Scottish horse would act, and he's like, okay, what would I do here? And a lot of the time it's like, okay, so if the horse was to do this, I would release the pressure, so I'm going to back off. If the horse was doing this, I'd apply pressure, so I'm going to like continue to ask her questions. Like, you see in his mind, like the way he's thinking this through, because he worked with animals, he's so good at sort of seeing and reading body language and knowing when to back off. And he appreciates the fact that pushing too hard doesn't get you results. And so this is what he does. He is kind, he is gentle, he is understanding, and honestly, just as a character, West is excellent. He has 2 kids who are just... I don't like kids. I do not like kids in novels. You could probably find like different books in here where there are kids, and I normally do not like kids in novels. At least when they're like old enough to be... There's like a certain period of like kids in novels. So like, for example, Next of Kin, not a problem because the baby is literally a newborn baby and the older kid is like 15, 16. So it's not like, these are kids, like kids. Like, one of them cannot filter what comes out of her mouth. Kind of kid, like she's 6 or 7, and the older one's like 9 or 10, something like that. Like, these are kids. And normally I would hate that because they just... Kids. I don't like kids when you can't talk to them and actually have a conversation with them. Like, before that, like when they're babies, fine. When they start to like walk and talk and get into stuff and still can't like logic with you, not a fan. Once you can actually like discuss things with them, then it's fine again. So that's like my little area where I don't like to see kids in novels or in real life, to be perfectly honest. And these kids are right bang smack in the middle of that, and yet I think these kids are great. The way they are incorporated into this, like, they are the best behaved kids in the world. Like, they're totally not realistic. I'm sure some of these kids are like that, but like, they perfectly slot into the story. They perfectly do like what they need to do, and they're well written enough that I don't mind. Like, I actually really enjoyed having this like interaction between the female main character and the kids, and West and his ex, who are on great terms, and their kids don't have any issues with the fact that they're divorced. Like, there's actual like thought taken into the fact that this is a divorced dad and his partner still lives like close enough. I just, honestly, Elsie Silver just continues to get better. I still think I prefer the Chestnut Swing series to this series, but that also holds a special place in my heart, so never really gonna beat it, is it? Next, I read Pucking Around by Emily Rath. I also got this for an author event. So Emily Rath was doing a signing at the romance bookshop, the Book Lover shop in Edinburgh, after she was at Rare. And so Pucking Around and Pucking Wild, which you will see in a minute, were up for sale and signing, because those were the only two out in the series. Or, well, there's three novellas that I've not read, but these are the main novels. I did have them on Kindle. I do have them on Kindle, but I wanted a chance to meet Emily Rath, get them signed, get the books, so I did. These things are doorstops. These things are weapons. And yet they went like that. Every single one of them. Read it so quickly. Pucking Around is the first one, and it is a polyam romance. Again, I said this in my vlog that I've just been editing. I am not sure of like your acronyms. It does have it like in the front. It's got all the it's got tropes, tags, and content warnings. It's got a list of star signs for the characters and what that means for their character. It's got a list of the players, the coaches, the team support, the medical support, and the management, operations management, and the team, so you know who everybody is. You can flick back. It's got a list of finished words and phrases. I'm not even kidding. Like, it actually has finished words and phrases because one of the characters is Finnish and he will often say stuff in Finnish and it doesn't get translated. You just have to flick back and find out what he said, which I actually loved. Having it there and being able to go back to it was actually a better way to do it, I think. This follows Rachel, and Rachel is a resident doctor, so she is going through her medical school, or she's finished her medical school and going through her next part where they work in the hospitals and stuff like that. And she has just missed out on this really prestigious fellowship. I think it's Berkeley Fellowship, something like that. And she has commiserated the night before and wakes up to a whole bunch of calls and texts because the person who took her spot, or the person that was like first and she was second, had a horrific accident and can no longer do the fellowship, and so she is told that like she's basically the runner-up, so she's got the fellowship now. And normally they would get to choose who they go to, but because this guy was already starting the fellowship and he had already chosen his team, his like thing that he wanted to do, she just had to slot into that, and she was like, I will take it. I don't care where it is, I will take it. And then it turns out it's ice hockey, and she is thrilled because she specialises in joints and knees and hips specifically, and obviously hockey players take a lot of hits, they take a lot of damage, and it would be like a minefield of learning for her, just to hone her skills and to really, really get into the areas that she has studied and studied and studied for years. And so she's absolutely thrilled. Go back a little while, there was that one night, that's also the name of the novella. Rachel spent a night with a guy in Seattle and she hasn't been able to stop thinking about him. It was like a soulmates, stars aligned, instant love. Like, they had a great night. She got scared and she ran. She didn't tell him her name. She didn't get his name, phone numbers, nothing like that. While he was asleep, she snuck out of the hotel, and she has been regretting that ever since that happened. Guess who happens to be on the team? Jake, who's the guy she left in the hotel in Seattle, and he has been exactly the same. He has not been able to stop thinking about her. Even the whole team knows that his Seattle girl is the love of his life, is the woman of his dreams, and that he has lost her basically. Like, she's gone and he will probably never see her again. until Rachel walks into practice and they're like, and he's like, you, and she's like, oh my god, you. Yeah, so they kind of have this, like, she's determined she is not going to date one of her players, like hockey players, and he is just like, absolutely not, you're my soulmate, we need to be together. But he kind of like, they fail really badly at not being together, obviously. But at the same time, Rachel has also, before she started, met her new neighbour, who also picked her up from the airport. And his name is Caleb. Caleb, who happens to be very attractive, who Rachel has been getting on with the last few days before she starts up with the team. And he's really interested in Rachel as well. And did I mention he was also Jake's best friend? And so this becomes like a moment where she is potentially stuck between the two boys. But they decide, actually, why don't they just share? There's another element to it as well, because Caleb has always been in love with Jake. And so they end up just together. And then there's the goalie on the team, Elmari, or Mars. And he's also very interested in Rachel, and Rachel is also very interested in him. And so she talks with her boys, and they agree that if he is okay with the situation they have, she can do what she likes. This is so, like, incredible, the way that that Polyam is working to this. Like, as much as I know about Polyam, which is not a great deal, to be perfectly honest, the representation, as far as I'm aware, is really, really good. The number one thing that this group has is communication and respect for each other. Like, they have full, straightforward conversations. They don't beat about the bush. They are full on, like, either you are all the way in or we're not doing this. Like, we have to have straight lines of communication. We have to have complete trust. We have to be completely honest with each other. And they, like, that is the most important thing to them, is that there's trust, there's communication, there's no lying. The way they work through so many issues is, like, probably a therapist's dream. So, like, yeah, I absolutely love this. This was a lot more spicy than I was expecting. Although it's a 700-page romance novel, I don't know what I expected. So yeah, I really enjoyed, like, the story behind it as well. Like, there was so much going on, because Rachel's also the daughter of a very famous guitar player, and in this band, frontman, I can't even remember, but like, she is so scared of everything coming out because of the media and what she's been through as a child, with the media and as a teenager and stuff like that. Very reminiscent of the Christmas Tessa Bailey book, Wreck the Halls. Very reminiscent of that, actually. And yeah, it's just the way that these guys love it, like, this four love each other and care about each other, and actually, you know, genuinely do, like I say, care about each other. I loved it. I loved it so much. I love the other characters that we get to meet, and obviously we get more of those characters later on. Next, I read a book that twisted my brain a little bit, and that was Fractal Noise by Christopher Paolini. This is actually a prequel to Sleep in a Sea of Stars, I think. Yeah, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. And this, I've not read To Sleep, so I don't really have the context. I don't think, to be fair, I asked Vicky because she has read it, and she says that this doesn't really factor in a noticeable way. Like, it goes on to different characters, different situations, different things completely. But this is supposed to be, like, before that. And this crew are on a ship, and it's funny because it's very Wayfarers, but they don't like each other, which I think is a bad thing for a crew. Like, the whole point in The Martian is that the crew respect one another and they really like one another, and like, they can get along, and that's why they were chosen. This crew don't like each other. This crew are constantly at each other, and then they are also surveying, like, different parts of this galaxy to see if there's places that can be terraformed for humans to go and live on, or see if there's any life out there, etc, etc. And they come across this spot on a planet that is basically impossible. It is perfectly round, and there's a signal coming out at specific intervals at a specific frequency, and so there's absolutely no way that this is not, I was going to say man-made, but that's not what I mean, like, intentionally made by some sort of intelligent life. And so they decide to send some of the crew down to find out what this is, and if there's any creatures, aliens on the planet, and what that means for humanity. And so they send some of this crew down, and they have like specific crew members that they pick based on their specialities, and they go down, and it is a total mind fuck after that. They have to get through these different bands basically. So they've got these bands that they have created where like they've kind of marked it out for themselves on this map, like to get closer to this hole effectively, because that's what it is. It's a giant hole that's giving off this noise, and the closer they get, the louder the noise is, the more it kind of reverberates in their body and like affects everything. Like it affects the way they're thinking, it affects the way they're feeling, it affects their ability to sleep and to eat and to function, and it's like a descent into madness. Like this book is just, like I said, it was a total mindfuck. It is that kind of thing where, like, if you've read The Martian, I keep comparing it to The Martian, and not comparing it, but like compare and contrast, because Mark Watney as a character, when he is abandoned, when he's left on Mars, when he finds himself on Mars alone, he has this thing where he's like, no, I am not going to give in to this, I am going to survive. And even though he has these temper tantrums and he has his like, fuck that, I'm done, I'm ghost, it's fine, I'm dying, it's fine, like, has these little like freak outs, he'll then come back the next time and be like, okay, I feel better now, let's get shit done. And it's the same with the crew. Like the crew of Ares 4, which is what Mark, or Ares 3, sorry, which is what Mark was a part of, they are very much a let's pull together and get stuff done type crew. They have each other's backs. They absolutely 100%, you know, have been put together because they fit so well and because they have the best for each other in mind at all times. Like I said, this crew don't like each other. If Mark Watney was on this, it would have been much better. Like, I feel like the crew of Ares 3 could have dealt with this a lot better than this crew. But there's that isolation, there's that cabin fever, there's that sort of twist of madness. It was so interesting to read. It's not even that long. The writing is huge, but it was so interesting. I can't decide if I want to get myself a copy or not, because when I first read it, I was like, I'm not going to bother. But I've still not been able to stop thinking about it, and I want to reread it and see if I pick up more, and you know, so I might get myself a paperback copy of this. I'm not sure, because this is Vicky's and she loaned it to me, so thank you very much, Vicky. Next, I needed something to like bleach my brain from reading Fractal Noise, and so I reread Hopeless by Elsie Silver, which was the last book in the Chestnut Spring series that I needed to complete my reread, and I had been putting it off for ages. It is not my favourite in the series. We all know Reckless is my favourite, and Reckless was the last one I read, so it was like book hangover almost, like I didn't want to move away from it. But Hopeless follows Bo, who is the middle child, I would say. Cade is older, Rhett is younger, and Violet is younger than all of them. So yeah, Bo is effectively the middle child. And Bo is or was a soldier, and now he is back home and not dealing with the fact that he is no longer a soldier very well. Like, we know through research and things like this, soldiers don't take very well to being civilians. Like, it's quite common, especially for those who've seen combat, and he was a sort of special intelligence, like he would go and do stuff like the Canadian equivalent of like SEAL Team 6 or the SAS, or you know, stuff like that. He would do like special missions that nobody could know about, and so he has seen a lot of stuff, he's done a lot of stuff, and so it has affected him mentally, and it has affected his moods, the way he came home, and the stuff that happened in the last few books have really affected the way he is functioning, just like mentally and kind of emotionally with everybody. And so he is also getting really sick of people like women like propositioning him, because like the family's really popular, and so he's like, get away from me. And the bartender at the bar, Bailey, who is the daughter of their next door neighbour, who are like horrible family, except Bailey, she is constantly being treated like trash because her family are basically trash. I'm not going to say that's not true, because her brother and her dad, absolute trash. Bailey, though, she's not. She's actually intelligent and she's sweet and she's kind, but everybody just lumps her in with her brothers and dad, and Bo doesn't like that. Bo doesn't see that's fair, and Bailey is somebody that he's always seen and respected, and when she says, oh yeah, if I had your name, then I would be treated differently as well. And he was like, okay, bet. And she's like, I'm sorry, what? He's like, let's get engaged and I'll give you my name. And everybody, you'll see that that's like, you know. So they put this bet on. And so Bailey and him kind of announced to everybody that they're engaged, and it's a fake engagement, fake dating sort of scenario. So you can imagine where that goes. But just seeing these two grow together and the way that they deal with their different traumas is so amazing. Like, there's a note at the end of this from Elsie Silver that I think you should read after you've read it, and it really puts a little bit into perspective. She also worked with a couple soldiers to get sort of accurate representation of soldiers like coming home and stuff like that, and I just really, really like this. Part of the reason that I put this off is because this is a little bit more hard-hitting than the others. Like, this has a little bit more like painful trauma attached to it than the others, and it's not like a fun flirty time. It is, but it's not at the same time. But I really, really love Beau as a character, love Bailey as a character, and just getting to see them and the whole family finally get their happy endings. It's such a nice wrap up to this book. Did I cry? Yes. Is it a reread? Yes, but I still cried. Next was another reread because one was not enough. So I reread Immortal Rising. This was supposed to be a different book, but I had skipped a book accidentally in my reread. So Immortal Rising was the actual next book that I needed to read in my reread. And this follows Stephanie, who we meet as a teenager books and books and books and books ago. She is now in her 20s, and she's still on the precipice of potentially going mad. And so she lives out in the middle of nowhere when Thorn turns up. And Thorn is one of Dr. Dressler's experiments. So Dr. Dressler is like an arc that we see throughout. This is kind of coming to the close of that arc. And Dr. Dressler is a sort of mad scientist. He bought this private island and was experimenting with gene splicing and stuff like that, creating these hybrid children. Thorn is one of those children, so he has multiple different species kind of DNA spliced into his own DNA, including down to the fact that he heals exceedingly quickly and has wings. Yes, he has wings. And Stephanie is so... There's something strange about Stephanie, and nobody knows what it is yet, but she can hear everybody's thoughts all of the time. Like, she doesn't need to concentrate like the other vampires in this have to concentrate. They're trying to hear people's thoughts and they cannot hear the thoughts of any older vampire, immortal as they like to be called, but Stephanie can. And Stephanie is also an Andante, which means that she does not have the fangs. So there were 2 batches of nanos used. One created the Andantes or no fangers. So that first batch of nanos, you either got you got like 3 sets of people. So one set died immediately, one set went crazy, and often are like a lot of the rogues that you see in the Rogue Hunter part of this, and the third were perfectly normal. They just didn't grow fangs when everybody else did. And so she was given these nanos and became an Andante. But everybody's so scared that she's going to end up as a no-fanger, because getting bombarded with everybody's thoughts all of the time would drive anybody mad. It's like having a radio or several radios turned up all of the time, and she cannot unhear it. Like, she cannot get these voices out of her head, and so that's why she lives in the middle of nowhere. But when Thorn shows up, it switches off, and suddenly she can't hear anything, and it's both like makes her panic, but also gives them a bit of relief knowing that she's, is she going to go mad? Is she not? What's happening? Like, but at the same time, Dr. Dressler is also still hunting Thorn and still hunting Stephanie, so that comes up as well. But I love this. I love seeing Stephanie as an older, like in her 20s, because she went through a lot of trauma in her teens, and that is not left aside. Like, she doesn't just suddenly become a new person. This is followed through on the potential, like, growth and trauma and everything that she's gone through in the past 10 plus years. And I really enjoyed that side of it. Like, I enjoyed the fact that she is a horror writer, because she writes the stuff that happens, like what happened to her and her sister, what happens to other victims of rogues and things like that, and our publisher markets it as horror, like paranormal horror. But it is just her stories, it's her diaries, it's her way of getting that out of her system. I love these two. I love the dog and the cat. The fact that the cat tries to eat Thorn. Like, he is like 1,000 times bigger than you, and yet you're just like, just cats, man, cats. But yeah, this was a really good instalment of this series, and I'm almost finished it. And we're not going to know until June. June. Next was a very exciting read, and actually, today as I'm filming, it gets delivered to me tomorrow, my special edition, so you'll see that in my vlog. But I read A Pirate's Life for Tea by Rebecca Thorne. I got this on NetGalley, and oh my god, was I so excited to get this on NetGalley, because Can't Spell Treason Without Tea, I also have to think about that. Can't Spell Treason Without Tea was such a good book. I absolutely loved it. It is the kind of fantasy that I can get my head around. It is very, like, it is very, I don't know how to describe it. It's not urban fantasy, but it isn't like difficult fantasy. Like, you don't need to think about building up this really fantastical world with this really fantastical, difficult to understand magic system and stuff. It just is. And it's mostly about the characters. Like, it's very character leaning. And getting to know Rhaenyra and Chianthe and the fine family that they end up with, and just all of that is incredible. It's kind of like, well, it is like Legends and Lattes, like that's what it's kind of inspired by. So just like Viv in Legends and Lattes goes to this village and builds her coffee shop, they go to this village and build a book and tea shop. And it's just, there are complications and bigger arcs going on, but quintessentially it is about them and their love and their found family, and really like focuses in on that. And A Pirate's Life for Tea continues on from that. So you do get a snippet of A Pirate's Life for Tea at the end of Can't Spell Treason Without Tea. And they go to visit a Dane to try and find out about something that happens in the first book. And while they're there, the party is disturbed by a pirate. And so they're tasked by the Dane to catch the pirate. And they're like, cool, yeah, fine, yeah, okay. And so they absolutely do not. They absolutely do not. They 100% get into the hijinks, because that is just who they are as people. And we add a couple more characters in there. We've got a guard named Bonnie, and we have the pirate whose name I can't remember for the life of me right now, who have been friends since they were children, and their lives have gone very different directions. But as Rebecca Thorne says in her dedication, double the lesbians, because everybody's gay. This book is so gay. I love it. Like, they're all so gay. Like, these two books, so gay. So gay, and I love it, and it's so casually just dropped in there. Absolutely love it. Next up, I read the next book in the Cuba saga, which is The Most Beautiful Girl in Cuba. And this follows a real character. So this follows the revolution in Cuba, where they eventually got rid of the Spanish rule, but it was the 1890s, and the Cubans were treated horrendously badly by the Spanish. They were put into reconcentration camps. Their land was burned, their houses were burned. They were put basically under the thumb of the Spanish rule in a way that they hadn't been before. And at the same time, America was kind of deciding whether or not to get involved. And so this follows three women again. We have a woman who was in fact a big part of the Cuban Revolution. We have a woman who represents the women left behind during the Cuban Revolution, who also tried to get involved. It's very The Nightingale-esque with her story. And the third is a reporter in New York. And while we are doing like love stories of these three women at the same time as the background of the historical element, it just ties in so beautifully. Like, it works together. They're all joined. This is very much like The Last Train to Key West, like where it all ties together and you see different characters like weave in and out of each other's stories. Chanel Clayton's writing, honestly, I cannot fault at all. This is my least favourite one because it's not written in the time that I like. And two, I just found a couple of the characters, well, one of the characters, to be particularly, I don't want to say dry, or unlikable, but I wasn't keen on her, and every time I got to her chapters, I was like, oh, here we go again, like, which is a shame because she was the real person, and she followed a lot of the actual history of her life, and I just found it really uninteresting. Of course, she was making up like conversations and things like that, but she just seemed very much like somebody who would just let things happen to her. rather than taking an onus on her own life. And while I understand why she did that, like, she explains why she does that in the book, but it just fell flat for interest in story, whereas the others were like actively trying to do stuff. And I suppose that also gives you like a kind of good balance if two of the characters are constantly pushing the action and then the other one is not, in a way. But it was still very interesting. I learned a lot. I ended up Googling, going down a rabbit hole about the Cuban Revolution, etc. And yeah, like I say, love Chanel Clayton's writing. Cannot fault it at all. And the research and things that she does into her books is fabulous. And I cannot wait to read the next one. The next thing I read was The Ringman by Stephanie Archer. You bet your ass I started reading that the minute I got it. And this was one of my most anticipated reads, along with Daydream. And this actually had a very similar synopsis to Daydream. I didn't actually tell you what the synopsis to Daydream was. Hallie basically feels like she needs to practice dating, and Henry's like, well, I'll help you. And they like fake date, but not in like the, like they're secretly telling everybody that they're dating, but they're not actually dating type, but in the like, he is doing boyfriendy, datey stuff with her so she can get the experience. And that is exactly the same story as this. Not exactly the same story, but like same trope, same general idea. So we have Hayden and Darcy, and they've been friends since university, since college, and Hayden has always kind of had a thing for Darcy. We find this out in the previous books as well. And yet Darcy has been in a relationship with his best friend since college, his other best friend, Kit. But then they break up and Darcy moves in with Hayden and is trying to get her life together because all she has known is her relationship with Kit, and she wants to be a player. She wants to be, you know, somebody who goes out and has hookups and stuff like that, just like Hayden does. And yeah, there's a lot to look into in this book. Like, it looks at the way that Hayden is perceived and the way that that is, that affects him, the way that it's kind of like, I don't know, it's really interesting because he kind of lets himself go along with what people's perception of him is, even if it's not true and even if it hurts him. And Darcy just thinks that he is fine and that he doesn't care about all that. And but yeah, these two end up, as you would expect, together because it is a romance novel and they are the two characters. But not without a few speed bumps. Like this, I really enjoyed this book. I love Stephanie Archer's writing, and I think this might be my favourite. I don't know. The other two are amazing, like Behind the Net and The Fake Out are amazing, but I really enjoyed these characters so much. And the next thing I read was some more hockey romance, and that is Bucking Wild by Emily Rath. This is the companion sequel to Bucking Around, but these books very much need to be read in order. Like, there has been a thought to the through line of these books. And this follows Langley and Tess. Langley is one of the players on the team, Ryan Langley, and he is it Langley? Langley, I was right, it is Ryan Langley. And he has had a thing for Tess since she came to visit Rachel, and he has not stopped thinking about her. But Tess is 10 years older than him, and she is like, I am not interested in somebody of your age. Thank you very much. But then something happens, and Tess ends up coming to stay with Rachel for a while, and because she doesn't really want to stay in the same house of Rachel and all of her boyfriends, or husbands by this point, she ends up going to stay somewhere else. Unfortunately, Ryan has injured himself quite badly, very badly in fact, and so he needs somewhere to stay because his house is not accessible for him in the state that he's in. And yeah, they end up accidentally being double booked, as it were, into the same house. And so they are kind of, again, I love forced proximity so much. They're kind of stuck together. And I love the way their characters change this as well. Like, Ryan is not a good patient. And Tess is a really caring and compassionate person, but she doesn't take anybody's shit. So that is a really fun dynamic to actually read. Like, Ryan is young, but he is hard-headed, and he is riddled with guilt and shame are not the right words, but like, he feels useless with the injury. Like, he really doesn't take to being injured very well. I don't suppose anybody would, but he is not forgiving of himself for being injured. And Tess kind of like has to say to him, like, you need to just stop it. Like, you just need to grow up and actually get a grip because you're injured, and moping about it's not going to make it any better. I think this one is probably my favourite of the three. I just love Tess and Ryan, and I love their dynamic. I love Proximity. We all know this. And I don't know, there was just something about these characters I absolutely loved. There was a character in this that made me so mad. So mad I actually was plotting, like, to find a way to bring a character to life just so I could, like, yeah. Oh my god, did this character make me so mad, like, I can't even, if I get started I'm gonna go. But yeah, I really, again, like, a lot of smut in this book, but it is such a good story. Like, there's such a good base story behind it as well. Not that if there wasn't, it would make it any, like, less, but I enjoyed the balance that it had. Like, I enjoyed the story behind everything else that was happening, and I'm so excited to continue to see these characters as we go. Of course, I followed that up straight away with Puck and Sweet because I had to. Puck and Sweet goes all the way back to before Rachel turned up in book 1. Actually to the morning that Rachel shows up in book 1. But it follows Poppy, who is the team's PR manager. And Poppy is a little pocket rocket dynamite. She is Elle Woods incarnate. She is PR Barbie galore. She is, I mean, this is why this suits her so well, even though it doesn't match my set. This suits Poppy so well, like all the pink and stuff like that, and look at her, she's so adorable. And as you can tell, this is another Pollyann book. Poppy, Miss PR Princess, ends up in a relationship with two of the players, who also ended up in a relationship with each other. Basically, this also follows Poppy and the two guys through the story. So you see things that happen in Pucking Around, you see things that happen in Pucking Wild from different perspectives, and it kind of is so cool to see it kind of build up a more 3D image of events that happen and why someone would say something and why somebody would do, like, there's something that happens in Pucking Around that you see in this and you're like, oh, okay. I now see the actual, like, I see. It's so interesting seeing it. Like, this book adds so much to the world, and I absolutely loved Poppy. I absolutely loved the guys, the backstories as well for the guys. That's the only thing I wish was a little bit more developed, was the backstories for the guys, because you spent a lot of time in Poppy's backstory, but not, like, one of the guys all kind of blurts out in one go, and then the other guy is just sort of like fine, as it were. But yeah, I loved this. I thought it was great. It's a great addition, and I can't wait for the next book. After that, I read something that was, like, unbelievably 180 in the other direction, and that is Percy Jackson and the Wrath of the Triple Goddess. This is the next in the Percy Jackson series, so it's like, it's the other direction, you can't even see it, it's over here. So this comes after Percy Jackson and the Chalice of the Gods, and this follows Percy, Annabeth and Grover as they pit sit for the Triple Goddess. I don't know whether to say who she is or not, because spoilers, but they end up going to her house and they have to pit sit, and obviously things go immediately wrong. And so they have to rectify this. They have to find the pets that they have lost before something terrible happens or she finds out. And this, I really enjoyed. Like I was saying in my vlog, this is written so differently to the original 5 books or even the Heroes of Olympus. You can tell that it's different, but it's not necessarily different in a bad way. I don't think it's different in a good way. Like, it doesn't improve it. Like, he's not improved in his writing, he's just writing from a different place now. But I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed snippets of things that we kind of get alluded to in the Trials of Apollo, because this comes before Trials of Apollo. There's so much going on and so much to think about even in such a short book. Oh, again, edges. Beautiful edges. And it's just a great addition. Like, I'm not even mad about, like, these books being written. I just want to spend as much time in the world of Percy Jackson as physically possible. So, yeah, I am all for more of Percy, Annabeth and Grover. I forgot to say, actually, this is part of a series where Percy is applying to college and he needs 3 recommendation letters from gods. The first was from the Chalice of the Gods, the second obviously from this book, and the third will be in the third book next year. But yeah, that's the whole point in this, is he's doing these tasks, these quests, to get recommendation letters to be able to go to college. And the last thing that I completed in the month of September was After the Bite by Lindsay Sands. This is the book that I actually pulled from my TBR, which I'd skipped the other book by accident, so oops. But this follows Valerian, Mackenzie and Natalie. Valerian is one of the Scottish characters. This is where it pains me a little bit. There is Scots and Scottish accents written to this book, and it's not done particularly well, which is disturbing considering Lindsay Sands has an entire Highlander series. So I don't want to know how that's written. I'm never reading it, just saying. I love her characters, I love her stories, I absolutely adore this series, but please, dear God, I implore everybody who is not Scottish to stop trying to write our accents, because it does not work. Or at least get somebody to look over it, because dear fuck. That was the only bit of this book I didn't like. The rest of it I remembered the story. So Natalie owns a golf course that Valerian plays on, and Valerian and the other rogue hunters have been chasing this guy called the Angel Maker, who is a serial killer who would kill people, drain them of all their blood, or women, and drain them of all their blood, and then leave them in the middle of a snow angel, hence the Angel Maker. And they believe that he is rogue, and so they've been hunting him. And one night when Valerian is on the golf course, Natalie gets spooked by somebody in the woods as she's going to get the cart back because it's run out of gas and fuel, and she bolts and gets injured, and Valerian realises that she is his life mate, and so he goes on this whole thing of like trying to woo her. Problem is they think the Angel Maker might be after her, and so they have to call in reinforcements, and so we get to pull in all the characters that we know and love from the previous books. Or some of the characters from the previous books. That'd be a lot if it was everybody. And yeah, it's such a good... I really enjoyed this. This reminds me a lot of... I want to say... it's Alex's book. Somebody's book where they have like an office higher up. This reminds me of that. It's not going to help anybody to know which one it is. But again, it's classic Lindsay Sands. Classic way this all pans out. She does have a daughter in this. It's like a small child. And she's not in it like enough for it to affect the story for me, but you do get to see like Valerian acting very fatherly and like caring towards the child, and like a really positive representation of how he sees them as coming as a pair. Like that's one of the things Natalie's worried about. Like she comes with her child, and there's no way to get out of that, and the fact that he's immediately just like, sure, like absolutely 100%, I love her because she is your daughter, like that is not a problem at all. It's really positive to see like what would be a step parent have that attitude, especially since I know a lot of people have issues with step parents. Not everybody, obviously, like you get people who are great bonus parents, but I'm assuming as a single mother or as a single parent, especially because she's alone, like her whole family died in a car crash. Her mum or dad, her husband and her son. And she was pregnant with Mia as it happened, and so she's got this fear, and also wouldn't obviously want to be with anybody that wouldn't accept her child either. There's also a dog in this who is excellent. The dog does get hurt, but the dog is fine. The dog is fine. So yeah, I am 1 week away from finishing my reread of this, and then, as I said before, we don't get another one till June. But she's currently actively working on 2 books, so hopefully we'll get the second one, like the next book after that, fairly soon. There we go. That is everything I read in the month of September, at least everything to completion, because I'm currently reading Whiskey Business, but it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm not getting that finished. It is not happening. So that will be carried on, and you'll see that in my October wrap up. I'm already really enjoying it, just so you know. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. If you want to let me know what you were here, please do by leaving some kind of hockey emoji down below. There's a lot of hockey romances in here. If you've read anything and you want to discuss it with me, please do it in the comments below. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.